Hey everyone, it is late at night and I am Norman. Tonight's review is a first for the channel for a couple of reasons. First, this watch is a chronograph, and while I actually own a Bulova quartz chronograph, I haven't reviewed it yet, so this will be the first chronograph on the channel. Secondly, it's a Mecha Quartz, which I have never experienced in the flesh until now. And that will come up later in this review, so be sure to stick around for that funny, not funny story. So this watch is a vintage-inspired chronograph put out by a brand whose mission is to provide affordable racing-inspired pieces. The brand in question is Marchond, which is named after the founder's great-grandfather. So let's flip the camera around and take a look at the Marchand Panda chronograph. So here is the box that it arrived in, just nice and straightforward. Marchond. It came with a warranty card and a very to-the-point instruction manual. Cleaning cloth, and it was wrapped in plastic there. And here is the watch. Now Marchand is a brand that I actually haven't looked into, and in scrolling through their pieces, they're definitely sporty and racing inspired. In fact, they have a lot of pieces like this one, but in all kinds of colorways. So you can pick and choose the exact colors that you're after. They have a lot of other pieces with similar cushiony cases, some other chronographs, and some pieces that are inspired by the dials that you find in a dashboard of a race car. So this particular piece is the Panda dial with yellow accents, and I actually really love those colors. I love how the yellow is tied into the strap, and this is a great rally strap here. It's nice and thick. These are 22mm lugs. This is a big boy, so when I put it on my wrist, it'll be pretty large on me. I have small wrists, so you'll have to kind of overlook that. But I really like this case design. That is so cool. The brushed and polished contrast is nice. And I really like how the brushed surfaces are in all the places where the case is most vulnerable. The lugs are really short, so that helps with the lug-to-lug distance. There's some polishing there. We have a signed crown and the Chronograph Pushers. Being Mecha Quartz, you're not going to use this a whole lot. You don't wind it, you just set the time with it. So we pop this out and set the time. The hands move kind of slow, which is interesting. So it takes a lot of turns to move that around. But they move nice and easily. Pop that back in. Flipping it over, we see we have a great etching of a vintage helmet there with some basic information. This is an English brand, which is pretty cool. And it has a screwed down case back. This thing feels really solid. It is really well built. Coming around to the dial. Just look at that. That is so cool. It's not overly busy. I like the applied indices and how they're framed. They really stick up there. That's pretty cool. And the chronograph subdials are barely inset, and they have a great texture to them. There's the tachometer in the rehot. And I love the contrast of the black and white there. And then those yellow highlights just look really cool. The date window at 6 is nice and subtle. I feel like it would have benefited from a nice frame around it though. That would have looked pretty cool, and it probably would have camouflaged it a little bit more. It would have come off as just another indices there, but wider. So you'll notice that it doesn't have running seconds. So when you're not using the chronograph, you don't really see anything moving there. And that is where my funny not funny story comes in. So David Schwartz had this prior to me and sent it over to me. And this was the first time that I'd ever seen a Mecha Quartz watch in person. and hilariously, I knew nothing about them. And so I assumed that maybe it was kind of like a kinetic charging thing. So I'm like moving it around and still nothing's moving. I tried the pushers and nothing was moving. So I reached out to him and told him I thought the battery was dead. So I sent it back to him. He received it and confirmed that the battery is working just fine, so I had to apologize for all that hassle, and he sent it back to me. Turns out, I simply was being too gentle with these pushers. So you push them in and they kind of stop there, but you have to go a little bit further till they actually click. This has a very straightforward chronograph feature to it. There's no lapse or anything like that, so you stop it, and it snaps back up because, again, it is a Mecha Quartz. So the battery actually moves mechanical parts. You could set it running and hit this one, and it simply snaps back. And in the subdial, we have a 24-hour dial there. And if you're running the chronograph long enough, we have this one here to track minutes. But it looks very nice. The aesthetic to this is really great. There's lume on those hands. So let's charge those up and take a look at them. And you can see them glowing in the light there. This lume is Super Luminova. There's not a ton of it on there, but it looks great. As for the specifications on this watch, the case size is 43 millimeters, so it is a big boy. The thickness is 12 millimeters. The lug width is 22 millimeters. The lug to lug is 49 millimeters. This has a sapphire crystal on it, and the movement that's inside it is a Japanese Seiko caliber VK64 chronograph hybrid Mecha Quartz movement. Alright, so let me take off my vintage Movado Museum 36 millimeter. And we'll put this on the wrist and I'll show you what it looks like. Here is the Marchond Panda dial on my 7-inch wrist. I really like those aesthetics. Chronographs are one thing that, as you know, I only have one of, but they always catch my eye when I see them. I'm surprised I don't own more. Probably ought to add some at some point. I just love those colors. That yellow is so great. It's so much fun. And again, that contrast of black and white makes this thing look really sharp. That is so cool. If you love racing-inspired watches, you definitely ought to check out Marchond. Their pieces are all kind of like this. Definitely racing-inspired. That is a great aesthetic. And the mix of brushed and polished surfaces is so cool. I like the way doing that kind of dresses up a watch a bit, and yet keeps it tooly. Those pushers look great too. That's such a fun detail of chronographs, having those pushers there on the side. I like the hand set on here, just nice and basic. That seconds hand is great. Be sure to check out Marchond. I've put a link to their website in the description below. And thanks so much to the company for sending this around for review. So there you have it, a Mecha Quartz chronograph with a great color scheme to it and great aesthetics. Thanks for watching.